Riley Carter was born in a modest community on the outskirts of a vast, bustling city. The neighborhood she grew up in was filled with the daily hustle of street vendors, honking cars, and people trying to make ends meet. Even as a young girl, Riley's eyes sparkled with determination. She was orphaned at a tender age, and though she barely remembered her parents, she clung to a sense of hope. Her life was difficult from the start, waking up early to fetch water, rushing to school, and returning home to chores she had to manage on her own. Yet, she refused to let her struggles defeat her. At 15, Riley began taking on a series of small jobs. She cleaned offices after school and tutored younger children in the evenings. She never spent her money on frivolous items. Instead, she saved up to fund her first tiny business venture, an after-school tutoring program. Word got around that she was patient, kind, and adept at breaking down complex schoolwork into simple lessons. Soon enough, her tutoring service expanded to different corners of the city. Upon completing high school, she secured an internship at a budding tech startup. This was where her world began to change. She learned about software development, app design, and even the fundamentals of real estate investments. Above all, she absorbed invaluable lessons about how to manage a business, from budgeting and marketing to project management. She often slept at her desk, waking up before anyone else to continue whatever task she had set for herself the night before. Her resolve and generosity became legendary among her peers. Despite having so little, she would still find ways to help those around her. Whether it was buying groceries for an elderly neighbor or sponsoring a child's school supplies, Riley's heart was consistently pointed toward service. This trait drew people to her, and she built a small network of friends and supporters who believe in her passion. Among these friends was Angela. They met when Angela was working as a junior accountant at the same startup. A sharp-minded woman, Angela quickly noticed Riley's dedication. Their bond was immediate, forged through late nights of brainstorming and early mornings of shared coffee. When Riley struck out on her own and formed a small tech consultancy, Angela was by her side, helping organize finances and plan future investments. Over the next few years, Riley's company, Carter Innovations, grew into a multifaceted powerhouse. She branched into real estate, acquiring undervalued properties and converting them into profitable commercial or residential spaces. She also launched philanthropic initiatives aimed at empowering underprivileged youth with technical training. Slowly but surely, Carter Innovations became a respected name throughout the region. The public admired how Riley combined business acumen with a relentless desire to give back. It was at a charity gala celebrating one of her educational outreach programs that Riley first encountered Oliver Gray. He was in his late 30s, standing by a lavish buffet table, dressed in an elegant tailored suit and exuding a seemingly effortless charm. People around him laughed at his jokes, drawn by his magnetic presence. Angela, who was also there, introduced him to Riley with a polite smile. "Riley, this is Oliver Gray," Angela said, gesturing toward him. "He's been a strong supporter of the arts. Oliver, meet the founder of this initiative, my dear friend, Riley Carter." Oliver reached out to shake Riley's hand. "The famous Riley Carter," he said with a winning grin. "I've read about your incredible work, but seeing it in person leaves me even more impressed." Riley, taken aback by his poise, returned his handshake. "Thank you. I'm glad to see people who share my passion for these causes." Their connection was immediate, at least on the surface. Oliver's eyes sparkled with warmth, and his playful jokes made her laugh. When they danced later that evening, she felt something shift inside her, as if fate had guided their footsteps. She caught Angela watching them, concern flickering across her features, but at the time, Riley assumed her friend was merely being protective. Their romance escalated at lightning speed. Oliver courted Riley with gusto. Exclusive dinners at top restaurants, surprise flower deliveries, weekend getaways to scenic resorts. Society pages began labeling them the city's golden couple. Angela remained polite toward Oliver, but kept a subtle watch on his behavior. She saw moments when Oliver's smile didn't quite reach his eyes, or when he looked visibly annoyed if the attention shifted entirely to Riley. Eventually, Oliver proposed. He chose a small, private dinner, serenading Riley with sweet words about how she had transformed his life. Overjoyed and feeling deeply in love, Riley accepted without hesitation. Their wedding was the event of the year, hosted at a sprawling beachside resort with pristine white sands. The media covered it extensively, broadcasting the couple's vows on prime time. Oliver wore a crisp white suit that accentuated his handsome features, and Riley, in a designer gown, looked radiant as she walked down the aisle with tears of joy in her eyes. But beneath Oliver's polished facade, envy lurked. He often felt overshadowed by Riley's reputation and success. She was the genius entrepreneur, the beloved philanthropist, the strong presence that people naturally gravitated toward. He told himself that he was proud of her, but there were nights when he lay awake, staring at the ceiling, resentful of her unwavering popularity. He wanted more than to simply be known as Riley Carter's husband. Shortly after their honeymoon, Oliver began investigating how he might benefit from being married to a wealthy woman. Riley, careful by nature, had insisted on prenuptial agreements. Many of her assets were locked in legal trusts meant for philanthropic causes, not for personal inheritance. This didn't sit well with Oliver. He craved unrestricted access to the wealth he felt he deserved. Stealthily, he gathered information about inheritance laws, life insurance, and any loopholes in the trust structures that might reward him handsomely if something catastrophic happened to Riley. While Oliver plastered on a loving smile every time the paparazzi snapped their photos, Angela grew increasingly uneasy. She couldn't ignore the unguarded moments where his expression revealed something predatory. But Riley's heart brimmed with love, and her trust was unshakable. Angela resolved to keep a close eye on Oliver, vowing to step in if she ever found concrete proof of wrongdoing. Several months into their marriage, Riley decided to surprise Oliver with a luxurious cruise. She had been searching for a grand gesture to celebrate their love and temporarily escape the demands of their busy lives. The enormous ship boasted lavish cabins, gourmet dining, pools, spas, and live entertainment every night. When she told Oliver about the trip, she expected him to be overjoyed. And Oliver did perform excitement convincingly, wrapping Riley in a tight embrace and proclaiming how thoughtful she was. Inside, however, he was already formulating a sinister plan. Far away from land, on a massive ocean liner, accidents could happen with few witnesses. He made mental notes of the best places on board to carry out his scheme. On the first day of the voyage, Riley glowed with happiness. She relished each moment with Oliver, strolling hand in hand along the deck under the sun, sipping cocktails by the pool, and exploring the grand theaters that showcased musical performances each evening. At night, they would return to their private suite with a balcony overlooking the endless sea. The stars were so bright it felt like they were on another planet altogether. Oliver played his part well, showing just enough affection and charm to keep Riley unsuspecting. But whenever he found a quiet moment alone, his eyes would dart to corners of the ship that were deserted at night. He memorized the deck's layout, looking for the perfect opportunity. Finally, on a calm evening, after a delicious dinner paired with a bottle of wine, Oliver suggested that they take a late-night walk on the upper deck to gaze at the stars. Riley happily agreed, linking her arm through his as they ascended the stairs. The sky was clear, and a gentle breeze rustled her lightweight dress. She leaned against the railing, enchanted by the moonlit ocean that stretched into the horizon. Oliver hovered behind her, his pulse hammering with tension. This is it, he told himself. He placed his arm around her waist, leaning in to whisper, "You're so beautiful." Riley turned to smile at him, her eyes reflecting her trust and love. Then, without warning, he shoved her backward with brutal force. A choked scream escaped her throat as she tumbled over the railing, arms flailing. The last thing she saw was Oliver's face, cold, indifferent, as the black water swallowed her. She hit the ocean with a splash that sounded like a distant echo in her own ears. Desperately, she tried to keep afloat, but the shock of impact and the powerful ship's wake pulled her under. Oliver, breathing hard, leaned over just enough to confirm that Riley was no longer visible. For a moment, time stood still. Then he launched himself into action, running toward a nearby crew member. "Help!" he cried, feigning panic. "My wife, she fell overboard." She leaned too far over the railing. I tried to save her, but he allowed tears to fill his eyes. The crew sounded the alarm. Passengers were woken from their cabins, crowding the decks and peering over the side. Flashlights cut across the surface of the water as the search began. Rescue boats were lowered, but the sea was vast, and the darkness, too, enveloping. Riley was gone without a trace. In the aftermath, Oliver gave a statement to the ship's security team. He insisted that Riley had been tipsy from dinner wine and had stumbled. Witnesses confirmed seeing them sharing a bottle of wine earlier that night. No one else had witnessed the actual push, and with no body found, the assumption was a tragic accident. Back on land, word of Riley Carter's death spread like wildfire across media outlets. The public was devastated, mourning the loss of a philanthropist who had transformed so many lives. Hashtags dedicated to her memory trended on social platforms, while news channels replayed tributes to her remarkable success story. In the weeks following the incident, a palpable gloom descended on the city. Billboards displayed Riley's image draped with black ribbons. People lit candles outside Carter Innovations headquarters, gathering to pray and share stories about how Riley's generosity had touched them. Angela, meanwhile, was beside herself with grief, but her sorrow mixed with something more potent, deep suspicion. A public memorial service was held in a grand cathedral. Although there was no body to bury, a symbolic casket was placed at the front. The pews overflowed with people eager to pay their last respects. Tearful speeches recounted Riley's life and the scope of her achievements, scholarships for needy students, hospitals receiving much-needed funds, entire communities improved under her initiatives. Throughout this heartbreaking event, Oliver stood at the front, attempting to embody the image of a grieving widower. He dabbed at his eyes with a handkerchief and sighed dramatically, hugging individuals who came up to offer their condolences. Angela observed him from a distance, her arms folded, her teeth clenched. There was an artificial quality to his grief, like an actor performing a role he didn't fully understand. After the service, Angela managed to corner Oliver for a brief conversation. She waited until most people had filtered out, leaving a hushed atmosphere in the cathedral. Standing near a memorial wreath of white lilies, she cleared her throat. "Oliver," she said quietly, "I need to talk to you about what happened on the cruise." He raised his head, his eyes still somewhat moist with tears. "What is it, Angela? I'm in no state to be interrogated right now." She kept her tone calm, but firm. "You said Riley fell off the ship because she was drunk. But Riley was never one to overindulge. It doesn't make sense. You two were on the deck alone, weren't you?" Oliver bristled. "Are you suggesting I had something to do with her death?" he snapped, a little too harshly. His reaction caused a few nearby mourners to glance their way. Angela took a step back, her heart pounding. She had been careful not to outright accuse him, but his defensive tone only fueled her doubts. She replied softly, "I just want to understand." He let out a shaky exhale. "I don't want to talk about this anymore," he said, voice thick with mock sorrow. "Please, let me grieve in peace." Watching Oliver turn away, Angela resolved that she wouldn't drop the matter. She began researching every detail of the incident. Hiring a discreet private investigator, she pored over cruise ship records, passenger statements, and anything else she could get her hands on. Bits and pieces of evidence failed to line up with Oliver's version of events. Oddly, some of the ship's security cameras had missing footage, and several staff members commented that Riley hadn't appeared intoxicated at all. While Angela dug deeper, Oliver made grand moves to claim Riley's assets. A cluster of lawyers helped him navigate complicated paperwork, but they discovered that much of her wealth was tied up in foundations and trusts. Claiming it wasn't going to be easy, and that made Oliver increasingly frustrated. Late at night, he would toss and turn in the couple's massive bed, alone now, wondering if he might have to resort to forging documents or applying more extreme measures. The city, meanwhile, was wrapped in a collective state of mourning. Online, Fans of Riley shared their best memories. Various organizations she had helped posted tributes. Her philanthropic deeds seemed endless, reinforcing her cherished status in people's hearts. In one emotional vigil, thousands of mourners gathered with lit candles. Songs were sung, and poems were recited in her honor. Oliver attended, wearing an anguished expression, but when he thought no one was looking, the pain vanished from his eyes, replaced by impatient calculation. Angela, noticing this, tightened her resolve. She was convinced more than ever that Oliver had orchestrated the so-called accident. Unbeknownst to the grieving city, Riley Carter was not dead. Many miles away, in a humble fishing village along a secluded coastline, she lay unconscious in a small hut, fighting for life. Before dawn one morning, the local fisherman named David had discovered her washed ashore. Her clothes were shredded by the ocean currents, her skin covered in bruises, and her breathing was faint. Alarmed, David had shouted for help. His elderly mother joined him, and together they carried Riley to his hut. For days, David fed her sips of water, covered her shivering body with thin blankets, and applied homemade herbal remedies to her wounds. He had never seen anyone in such a precarious condition. Family and friends encouraged him to call the authorities, but David hesitated. He didn't know who she was or how she ended up in the water. What if returning her to the outside world brought more harm than good? Instinct told him to wait until she regained consciousness and could speak for herself. At last, Riley opened her eyes. She felt a surge of confusion, as though she had awakened in a dream. A wooden ceiling hovered above her, and the smell of salty air drifted in from the door. Her body was sore and bandaged, and she couldn't remember how she had gotten there. David's mother was the first to notice she was awake. She offered a gentle smile and beckoned her son to join them. Riley tried to speak, but her throat felt raw. After sipping some warm broth, she finally whispered, Who are you?" "My name is David," he replied, voice soothing. "I found you on the shore. Do you remember anything?" Straining to piece together the puzzle of her broken memories, she shook her head. At first, she remembered only scattered images, blue water, a sudden sense of terror, a man's face twisted in cruelty. Over the next several days, she had vivid nightmares that caused her to jolt upright, gasping for breath. Gradually, her memories began to sharpen. She recalled a cruise ship, a husband named Oliver, and a horrifying moment he pushed her. One night, with the lantern's soft glow illuminating the hut, she turned to David, her voice trembling. "He tried to kill me," she said, fresh tears welling in her eyes. "Oliver, I remember it now." David's calm expression shifted to concern. "I'm so sorry," he murmured, instinctively reaching out to comfort her. "Why would someone do that? You're his wife." Riley shook her head, fear and anger mingling in her gaze. "I don't know, but he wanted me gone." Then, she exhaled shakily. "I need to go back. I have to see what he's doing, why he betrayed me." David nodded. "You can stay here as long as you need, until you recover. When you're stronger, I'll help you find a way home." During her stay, Riley took short walks by the shoreline, leaning on David for support first. The ocean that had nearly claimed her life was also where she found fragments of solace. She breathed the salty air and tried to make sense of her jumbled emotions. David turned out to be a gentle and honest companion, teaching her about his fishing routines and the simple joys of life by the sea. One day, when she felt confident enough, she pulled David aside with a plan. "I can't just walk back into the city without proof," she said, her voice resolute. "Oliver will deny everything. But if I show up publicly during a moment he's least expecting and present evidence, it might force the authorities to take notice." "How do you plan to do that?" David asked, curious but eager to assist. Riley's eyes hardened with determination. "I'll record my account. I'll tell my story on camera, how he pushed me, how I survived, and how you rescued me. Once it's out there, Oliver can't hide anymore." David helped her gather the necessary materials: a small camera phone, a spare battery, and a flash drive to store the footage. They recorded multiple takes to ensure clarity. Riley's voice trembled a bit as she recounted the betrayal, but she refused to shy away from the harsh details. She spoke of her empire, her philanthropic dreams, and how one moment of cruelty nearly stole it all away. After they finished recording, she placed the flash drive in a waterproof pouch. "We have to be cautious," she said. "If Oliver learns I'm alive before I reveal the truth, he might try something else." David gave her a solemn nod. "I'll do whatever it takes to keep you safe." A few days later, they made discreet travel arrangements. David had a trusted acquaintance with a small boat who could ferry them closer to the city without drawing attention. When they arrived, Riley secured a modest, safe house on the outskirts through another contact she trusted from her philanthropic circles. There, she waited for the perfect moment to confront Oliver and reclaim her life. News soon reached Riley that Oliver was organizing a more private burial ceremony. Despite the large public memorial that had already taken place, he wanted a final event to symbolize laying her to rest, presumably to cement his image as a grieving husband and possibly expedite legal claims on her estate. A handful of select reporters were invited, alongside close friends and a few lawyers. The day was bright and sweltering. The sky was a piercing blue, and the sun beat down on the cemetery lawns. A small group gathered around the site where an empty casket stood, adorned with white flowers. Oliver appeared in a tailored black suit, dark sunglasses shielding his eyes. He dabbed at his forehead with a handkerchief, looking more annoyed by the heat than overcome with grief. Angela attended as well, her expression sober, but her heart filled with quiet suspicion. She'd been fighting to gather enough proof to implicate Oliver, yet every lead felt frustratingly inconclusive. The private investigator had found minor inconsistencies, but not the undeniable smoking gun they needed. As the ceremony began, Oliver stepped forward to address the attendees. The cameras turned to him, microphones poised to catch every word. His voice quivered in feigned sorrow. "We have gathered here to finally put my beloved wife, Riley Carter, to rest. Though we could not recover her body, I pray her spirit can find peace." He placed a hand theatrically over his heart. She was a beacon of hope for this city, and her loss is immeasurable. Several people bowed their heads respectfully. Angela, however, fixed her gaze on Oliver. She felt her stomach twist, recalling how he had orchestrated everything with such cold precision. Suddenly, before Oliver could continue, a firm, clear voice sliced through the silence. "Stop this performance right now." All heads whipped around. At the far end of the small crowd stood a woman in a simple dress, barefoot on the grass. Her hair was a bit disheveled, and she looked thinner than before, but there was no mistaking her face. It was Riley Carter, alive and very much present. Gasps of shock rippled through the gathering, and the hush was absolute for a moment that felt frozen in time. Angela's eyes grew wide with disbelief and overwhelming relief. She dropped the small black clutch she was holding and stumbled forward. "Riley," she whispered, tears already forming. Then she broke into a run. In front of dozens of stunned onlookers, she flung her arms around Riley, pulling her into a tight embrace. "Oh God, you're alive!" she sobbed, hardly able to contain her joy. Riley's voice was soft but steady. "I'm here, Angela," she said, hugging her dear friend back. "Thank you for never giving up on me." Chaos erupted among the reporters. Cameras flashed incessantly, and frantic phone calls began as journalists realized they had landed the scoop of a lifetime: the miraculous return of a supposedly drowned philanthropist. Oliver, meanwhile, stood paralyzed, mouth agape, face turning pale beneath the blazing sun. His mind raced for an explanation, but he found none. Summoning her courage, Riley stepped away from Angela and advanced toward Oliver. The cluster of cameras followed her every move. She pointed an accusing finger at him. "You tried to kill me," she said in a voice brimming with anger and grief. "You pushed me off that ship and left me to drown." Oliver tried to muster a response, but it emerged as a strangled sound. Finally, he managed a few words. That's insane. You were drunk. You fell. I tried to save you. You're lying," Riley shouted, voice echoing across the cemetery. All around, attendees watched in stunned fascination, many with phones already live streaming. "I remember everything. And I have proof. She gestured to a tall, lean figure standing a short distance away. David, looking slightly out of place in his plain shirt and trousers. Riley gave David a nod, and he stepped forward to hand a flash drive to a nearby reporter who was live streaming for a major news network. On this drive, Riley announced, is my testimony. It details Oliver's plan, how he shoved me overboard, how I was rescued, and how I survived. I recorded it myself. A wave of murmurs and exclamations coursed through the crowd. Oliver's eyes darted around, searching for a way out. Desperate, he tried to bolt, but Detective Cole, who had quietly arrived on the scene after hearing rumors of Riley's sudden reappearance, blocked his path. The detective had harbored suspicions ever since receiving Angela's reports, but lacked substantial evidence to build a case. Now, standing here with living proof, he was ready to act. Oliver Gray, Detective Cole stated, taking out a pair of handcuffs. I'm placing you under arrest. We'll conduct a full investigation, and this time, we have a living witness. Oliver's panicked gaze landed on Riley. You can't do this, he hissed, struggling as officers grabbed his arms. Where's the evidence? You can't prove. Riley stepped closer, looking him directly in the eye, her face calm despite the swirling emotions within her. I'm the proof, she said. I survived what you tried to do to me. God wasn't finished with me yet. As Oliver was led away by the police, reporters surged forward, thrusting microphones at Riley, snapping photos, and filming every second. Angela quickly intervened, ushering them back. Through tears, she said to her friend, I can't believe you're really here. I thought I lost you forever. Riley squeezed Angela's hand. You never lost me. I just needed time and a miracle to make it back. David stood quietly by, overwhelmed by the crowd. Sensing his unease, Riley guided him closer. This man saved my life, she declared to anyone listening. He found me on the shore and nursed me back to health. If not for him, I wouldn't be standing here today. Applause broke out spontaneously among a few spectators, and more people began filming David as well. With humility, he looked down, mumbling something about only doing what was right. But Riley made a mental promise then and there. She would repay his kindness in every way she could. In the meantime, reporters flung questions in rapid fire. How did you survive the fall? Will you press charges? What does this mean for Carter Innovations? Does this change the future of your philanthropic work? Riley, still weak from her ordeal, held up a hand. I'll answer everything in time, she said. But let me be clear, Oliver Gray will be held accountable for his actions. The cameras continued rolling even as the sun dipped lower in the sky, sending orange rays across the cemetery. The place that was meant to be Riley's final resting spot instead became the stage for her triumphant return. As Angela gently guided Riley away from the throng of journalists, the two friends embraced again, tears of relief flowing freely. Even as her exhaustion caught up with her, Riley felt a sense of profound gratitude and renewed purpose. Her story wasn't ending in tragedy. It was beginning again, forged in betrayal but reborn in strength. She intended to use her second chance at life, to continue her charitable endeavors, and to expose how greed and jealousy could lurk behind the warmest smiles. For those who witnessed her return, it was as though they had seen a ghost become flesh. The city buzzed with the news. Riley Carter is alive. In time, she would resume her seat at the helm of Carter Innovations, restoring faith to all who had grieved her loss. And Oliver's downfall would serve as a cautionary tale of how far manipulative ambition could go and how justice could still prevail in the end. Standing at the edge of the cemetery, Riley looked out over the crowd. She clasped Angela's hand and caught David's eye, offering a grateful smile. She wasn't sure what tomorrow would hold, but she knew this much. Her spirit, once shaken by betrayal and nearly extinguished by the sea, was unbreakable. She had returned, resurrected by fate and sheer will, ready to start a new chapter defined by her resilience and an unwavering commitment to do good.